In the dusty, sunlit roads of the Old West, where danger often lurked behind every bend, there emerged an outlaw unlike any other. His name was Charles Boles, but history remembers him by a more infamous name, a name that carries with it a sense of mystery, style, and even poetry. He was known as Black Bart, a gentleman stagecoach robber. Unlike the brutal gunslingers and merciless killers of the 19th century frontier, Black Bart built a legend not through bloodshed, but through wit, daring, and an almost Shakespearean sense of drama. He robbed 28 stagecoaches, often in broad daylight, armed only with a shotgun he never fired, and words he sometimes left behind in the form of mocking, rhyming poems. He terrified Wells Fargo, embarrassed lawmen, but somehow won the reluctant admiration of the public. But behind the mask and myth was a man with scars, regrets, and a story that began long before his first hold-up on a lonely trail. To understand Black Bart, we must go back to the man who once fought in the Civil War, who tried and failed at prospecting, who lost everything and chose instead to carve out a strange, polite form of outlawry on the roads of California. Born as Charles Boles in 1829 in England, he immigrated with his family to New York as a boy. By all accounts, his early life was unremarkable, but the law of fortune, adventure, and a restless spirit carried him west during the gold rush, like thousands of others. He dreamed of striking it rich in California's Golden Hills. For a while, he worked the mines. He was strong, resourceful, and determined, yet fortune never favored him. He toiled, struggled, and ultimately failed to make a lasting living from gold. The disappointment hardened him, but it wasn't until the Civil War that his life truly changed. Charles Boles enlisted in the Union Army, serving honorably. He survived the carnage of battlefields, endured wounds, and witnessed the grim price of war. By the war's end, he was no longer the same man who had once dreamed of gold and a quiet life. He had seen too much, lost too much. After the war, he returned to mining, but a dispute with the powerful Wells Fargo company, the same company whose coaches he would one day rob, would sow the seeds of his future. Legend has it that while prospecting in Montana, he and some partners tried to develop a claim. Wells Fargo agents pressured and harassed them, forcing them to abandon the mine. Charles never forgot this betrayal. Whether the details are fully accurate or not, one thing is certain: he carried a grudge against Wells Fargo, and that grudge may have been the spark that turned him from prospector to bandit. In 1875, at nearly 50 years old, an age when most men had long abandoned dreams of daring adventure, Charles reinvented himself. Masked and disguised, he stepped onto a stagecoach road in Calaveras County, California, and committed his first robbery. It was unlike anything the passengers or driver had ever seen. Instead of a snarling bandit screaming threats, there was a calm, commanding figure. His face was concealed beneath a flour sack with eye holes cut out. His manner was eerily polite. Armed with a shotgun, he ordered the Wells Fargo strongbox to be surrendered. He did not rob the passengers. He did not curse, did not fire a shot. He simply took the box, tipped his hat, and vanished into the hills. From that moment on, a legend was born. The newspapers took notice. An outlaw who robbed without cruelty, who spared women, children, and the poor, who spoke with refined diction, almost as if he had been educated. He quickly earned the nickname Black Bart, a name borrowed from a popular dime novel villain of the time. And yet, unlike that fictional character, this Black Bart seemed like a strange, paradoxical figure, a criminal, but one with manners. Wells Fargo, however, was not amused. Each robbery cost them money, and each successive Black Bart made their guards and drivers look foolish. By the late 1870s and early 1880s, his fame and their frustration grew. He was not content with a single daring strike. Again and again, he appeared on lonely mountain trails, stepping into the road as the coaches rounded a bend, his disguise a long duster coat, a bowler hat, and that infamous flour sack mask became the stuff of Western folklore. And then there were the poems. On at least 2 occasions, Black Bart left behind mocking verses at the crime scene. After an 1877 robbery, he penned, "I've labored long and hard for bread, for honor, and for riches, but on my corns too long you've tread, you fine-haired sons of bitches." Signed simply, Black Bart, the P. Whether crude or clever, the poems captured public imagination. This was no ordinary bandit. He was an outlaw poet, taunting Wells Fargo with wit as much as with theft. And yet, what made Black Bart remarkable was not just his flair, but his restraint. He never shot anyone, never struck a passenger. He robbed with precision, took only what he needed, and then disappeared into the wilderness. Witnesses often described him as unfailingly polite. Women recalled that he reassured them during the robberies, even bowing before leaving. But Wells Fargo was determined to catch him. They deployed detectives, raised rewards, and studied every scrap of evidence. Still, Black Bart was always one step ahead. He would hike for miles on foot, often barefoot in rough terrain, to cover his trail. He seemed like a ghost, appearing and vanishing without a trace. For nearly a decade, Black Bart embarrassed Wells Fargo. He robbed stage after stage 28 in total. His take wasn't enormous by outlaw standards, usually a few $100s, sometimes more, but the symbolic sting, the humiliation of being mocked and bested by a solitary outlaw, cut deep. Finally, in 1883, his luck ran out. That year, near Sonora, California, Black Bart struck again, but this time, the driver fought back. Shots rang out. Black Bart fled, wounded, leaving behind a trail of evidence, most crucially, a handkerchief with a laundry mark. Wells Fargo detectives traced the laundry mark to a San Francisco laundromat. From there, they identified the man behind the mask, Charles Boles. When arrested, Charles did not rage or resist. He was calm, almost resigned. He admitted to his crimes without bravado, but with a strange sense of dignity. He confessed to numerous robberies, but insisted truthfully that he had never harmed anyone. The newspapers went wild. The mysterious outlaw was not a young, dashing gunslinger, but a middle-aged man with grey in his beard and lines on his face. A gentleman, yes, but also weary, worn down by life. In 1883, Charles Boles Black Bart was sentenced to 6 years in San Quentin prison. Even in prison, his legend grew. He was known for his refined speech, his polite manners. Guards and fellow inmates remarked that he seemed more like a schoolteacher than a notorious bandit. He served 4 years before being released early for good behavior. Upon his release, he gave interviews, admitting his regret and stating he was done with crime. But his story does not end cleanly. In 1888, shortly after his release, he disappeared from history. Some claimed Wells Fargo kept him under watch. Others said he tried to return to mining. Still others whispered that he fled east, starting life anew under another name. To this day, no one knows for sure what became of him. What we do know is this: Black Bart remains one of the most unusual outlaws of the American West. A man who robbed not with rage, but with restraint. A bandit who never fired his gun. A criminal who, in some strange way, embodied a code of honor however twisted. Was he truly a gentleman bandit, striking back at a company he believed had wronged him? Or was it all a performance? A carefully crafted mask to hide the desperation of a failed miner and aging Civil War veteran? In the end, the legend of Black Bart is as much about what he didn't do as what he did. He didn't kill. He didn't brutalize. He didn't even take from ordinary passengers. Instead, he left behind a trail of stories, verses, and a reputation that continues to fascinate. More than a century later, we still speak his name, not because of the money he stole, but because of the strange contradiction he represented. The outlaw as gentleman. And so, Black Bart lives on, not just in the history books, but in the lore of the Wild West, in the songs of folk singers, in the stories told around campfires. A thief. Yes, but a thief who dared to be different. Thank you for watching Crimes Through Time. If you found this story fascinating, hit the like button and subscribe for more dark legends and mysteries from history. And tell us in the comments, do you think Black Bart was truly a gentleman outlaw, or just a desperate man hiding behind a mask of politeness? We'll see you in the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay safe.